Hi, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, The Locker Room. It's a podcast where we really promote all of the kids in our Bayou region related to athletics and on the academic side also. We're here just to make sure that they get the spotlight that they deserve. It is girls basketball playoff time. Today is when Louisiana High School Athletic Association announces those brackets. We're going to have Casey Gisclair with us. He is going to get us caught up on who is going to be playing who and what we might see related to those girls basketball playoffs. We want to make sure that we get you the latest. And I got to tell you, in our area, it is tremendous how many teams we have going to the playoffs. I mean, just the rate of team compared to how many teams we have total is amazing. So it is a sport that is thriving in our area, and we do hope that some of those teams can make a nice run in the playoffs. Also going to have a nice interview with Julio Archila. Julio is in his first year as baseball coach over at Terrebonne High School, and we talked to him about getting things set up, how he feels about his Tigers, and what might happen going forward for that team. So again, we'll have Julio on a little bit later in the show. I always have my good friend here, Dustin Robichaud, who takes care of me behind the scenes, making sure that we get this thing produced every Monday. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
Yes, I am, Stan. It was a little chilly this morning.
It's we're getting back to that, and I know the baseball and softball coaches are not particularly fond of that. They were getting used to the warm weather after our snow event, but now they're feeling like it's a little bit more of this early season wintry time. And I got to tell you, we start baseball and softball so early in the state of Louisiana. You have to finish up at the beginning of May before graduation. You do have to start now. But it is a little bit too cold to be doing these things. Lots of tournaments were held this past weekend related to baseball. The jamborees for softball were done, so we're really going to get into baseball and softball coming up soon. And before we do get Casey on, want to just give a big shout out. Central Lafourche's girls were our last soccer team in the playoffs, and unfortunately, they went down to the powerhouse St. Thomas More this week. So nothing to hang your head about. St. Thomas More in the last week has defeated South Terrebonne, then Central Lafourche in the playoffs, and not only defeated them, shut both of those teams out. So Central Lafourche obviously is a very good soccer team, and it has been. I mean, they're defending state champs, and they do this every year. Nonetheless, Central Lafourche made it to the semifinals for the girls. So kind of your neck of the woods, too.
Yes, that's where I was born.
Yep, the Raceland area. And again, congratulations to them. We're going to jump right into it. Let's get into some basketball with Casey. Very happy to be joined by Casey Gisclair. It is basketball playoff time. The girls' bracket is actually going to be announced a little bit later today. We actually aired this or did this live maybe just before the LHSA put things out. But I'm not worried about that because I know Casey knows exactly sort of what's panning out with all of this. And when I say exact, we know that it's never a sure science, Casey, but with Go Preps and with the way things are done and the automatic, updating of our PowerPoint rankings, we're pretty sure, right?
We have a pretty doggone good idea before the bracket release of where local teams are headed. So good that in speaking to some of the local coaches, they're collecting film on the teams that we're about to tell you about here. So I think we're in pretty good shape.
Listen, I have to give you a little bit of props. You actually probably a couple of days ago knew exactly who was going to be in, who was going to be out. Maybe not necessarily who they were playing, because the one factor that always gets mixed up in all of this is that if a team has won their district, yet they were not in the PowerPoint rankings of 28 and above or 24 and above, depending on what bracket you were in, they automatically get pushed in and somebody gets pushed out. But it doesn't look like that's going to play a huge factor in all of that this year. At least I don't think so, right?
Yeah, it shouldn't be a big issue. And man, shout out to our local teams because we have a bunch of them in the playoffs. And we have a bunch of them who are going to be in pretty good spots in the playoffs. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure, during the course of this segment.
So that being said, how do you feel about that? Because, man, listen, just within the Lafourche Terrebonne Parish area with 11 high schools that compete, 9 are in. And then when you consider, could you imagine that 2 or 3 years ago, if we would to forecast, hey, 2 years from now, 9 of the 11 teams from our 2-parish area are going to be in, and one of them won't be Ellender. I mean,
Or South Lafourche.
or South Lafourche. I agree 100%. Listen, South Lafourche, and I'm sure, Coach Jenkins wouldn't take it this way. They have an excuse this year. There were some things, in any other year, 2 things, actually, I think, with South Lafourche, and I just want to voice my opinion on this. I know we've done it 1,000 times in the last 3 years, but to be playing in a district that is 4A and then say you have to go play 5A basketball, that's one. So that's without having the injuries that you've had, right? But then to have the injuries on top of it, the things that they've had to go through this year, you sort of understand South Lafourche's case. I guess you understand Ellender's too, because quite honestly, if you don't have the girls, you don't have the girls. That's just the way it is. It's just a state of basketball I never thought we'd come to.
It's awkward. It's weird to see. 10 years ago, we were talking about those 2 programs as being in the top 28 and playing for state championships and those types of things. And now neither one in the postseason. And yeah, you're right. It's very weird to see playoff brackets be released and those 2 teams not to be on a line where they're even hosting games usually in years past. So they're not being there at all. It is a little weird for sure.
Yep, great point. You're right. They're usually hosting. It's not that they're in. They're in very comfortably whenever they go in. Do want to remind everybody, go to Casey's sites to make sure you get the latest on all of this. So I would imagine during the day-to-day, you sort of keep your ear to the railroad track, so to speak, and Bayou Sports is going to have the pairings out when they're confirmed, right?
100%. When the brackets come out, we'll post them at BayouSports.com. That's BY-U sports.com. And we will make sure everybody is up to date. We'll let everybody know as soon as we know the times and everything. Most of those first round games will be on Thursday, but we'll let everybody know the times and everything of that sort. So yes, we are going to be covering the girls basketball playoffs hot and heavy throughout the week, and even looking to maybe live broadcast a matchup or 2 in the opening round.
Very good. And we'll talk about that after we talk about the brackets a little bit. Also want to mention, it probably is a little bit late for everybody, but I'm sure you and Brian will talk about it at the show at noon on KLEB. That would be play-by-play. So if you want to catch up with some of those coaches who may be in the playoffs, tune into KLEB at lunchtime. Your hours are different, somebody was telling me. How does that work now?
Yeah, we have a new political talk show in the morning, so we are now live from 12 to 2. We used to be 11:30 to 1, then we were 11 to 1. Now we're 12 to 2, and from what I understand, we're going to be 12 to 2 for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, new time slot, lunchtime, and yeah, looking forward to talking about the bracket, and we do have a couple of basketball coaches lined up later today.
Great way to catch up with those coaches and hear what they have to say about these pairings. Let's jump right into it. In Division 1 non-select, we have 3 local teams who are going in. The highest seed in your estimation will be?
Thibodeau sitting at number 17, just missing out on being at home in the opening round. The Lady Tigers are projected to face Airline. So it's looking like the Lady Tigers would have to make a cross-state trip in round 1. But looking at the matchups and knowing how difficult Thibodeau's schedule was, Thibodeau, I think, would be favored to win that game, even though it's going to be a road game. So Lady Tigers, highest seeded local team. But then there's a bunch of schools locally right on their tail, just trailing the pack a little bit. So Thibodeau looking like the lead dog locally, sitting at the number 17 seed.
And listen, Coach Barber knows how to win in that first round game. She's done it as of recent. So I think going to Airline is tough financially, but I think from a standpoint of going up there and understanding how to win, they might be the team that can do it. You mentioned right behind them our other local teams. It looks like Terrebonne going to come in right behind them.
Yep, Terrebonne right behind them, and HL Bourgeois right behind them. It's looking like Terrebonne 18, HL Bourgeois 19, setting up a situation where those teams also will be on the road, but also have fairly manageable matchups in the opening round. Terrebonne currently projected to face Mandeville in the 18 versus 15. And then the unique one is HL Bourgeois. And Stan, I don't know how this works. Like, it feels like every year and in every sport we have a district matchup in round 1. HL Bourgeois will be making the trip very likely just down the road to Boutique to take on Hanville. I know they played competitive with them during the season, and now looking to maybe go on the road and score an upset. But in the nuts, man. We do these numbers, and every doggone year we have a local team facing another local team in the first round.
Not only that, they played a couple of weeks ago, and it was an overtime game.
Yeah.
You mentioned it was close. It was overtime. So I would imagine, and you said this, you said if HL Bourgeois really gets out there, and I realize Terrebonne and Thibodaux have great years, but HL Bourgeois might be that team that, boy, if they could put a little spurt together, and they might very well. We don't know a lot about Airline and Mandeville. By the way, Mandeville's 21-9, I was just seeing. It might be a situation where HL Bourgeois has the best opportunity, right?
Look, man, when you dive into the numbers of our local 5A district, Destrehan ended up winning the district championship. The only local team that challenged them was HL Bourgeois. Everybody else kind of got beat by, 15, 20 points, whatever it may be. HL Bourgeois had them beat. So if you go by that, they are capable of playing at that high level. They are capable of, doing some real good things. So, yeah, you may well be right that they might be the most likely local team. And I know those girls are very competitive there. Losing that overtime game, they're not going to want to lose to Hanville again. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to go.
And, boy, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Although Thibodaux would be 17, Terrebonne would be 18, HL would be 19. I know HL took care of Terrebonne this past week. Did they beat Thibodaux? Did the girls beat Thibodaux?
Thibodaux beat HL Bourgeois.
HL was kind of each of them beat up on each other.
Yeah, Bourgeois had like a 13-point lead in the fourth quarter last week, actually, and Thibodaux came all the way back and beat them at the end.
Interesting. We wish those teams well. It is fair to say that although we have a lot of teams going in, we don't, until we get to the select bracket, we don't have a lot of super high-seeded teams, which is evident when we go to Division 2 of the non-select bracket. Assumption is a team that's usually in, and they're usually about where they're at this year. Yep. They're going in, it looks like around 22, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they'll be in there, number 22, slated to face West Feliciana. Coach Wilridge there has a program. They win some games. They're historically pretty doggone good. This season, I understand they're a little younger. And I saw them play in the tank a couple weeks ago. Have some talented girls. It's going to be a tall task going on the road, but you're right. It feels like the last several years they've been like 19, 23. Like they're always in that area where they're just outside of hosting, but they are annually in the postseason.
And one that I don't know when's the last time this school would have been in the playoffs. Maybe with Nick Sanak a couple of years ago one time, and then maybe a long stretch before that, even maybe back into the 80s as South Terrebonne made it this year. But a good little cycle coming up at South Terrebonne, right?
They have some kids that could play, man. They have a group of girls that are really talented. They have a group of girls that really give you everything that they have. And sometimes in girls basketball, you could kind of get in by scheduling right. If you schedule the right teams, you could stack up a bunch of PowerPoints and not even really be a good basketball team, but get in. That's not the case with South Terrebonne. South Terrebonne has girls. They could play. They earned their way in. This is not a schedule fluke. This was not cheating the system. This is a group of girls who played well throughout the course of the season and earned their way in. They've got a really good team and looking like they'll be traveling to take on Lakeshore. Can't wait to see how they could, maybe try to score an opening round upset.
So you said Assumption is going to be at West Feliciana.
Yes, sir.
And let me look. West Feliciana is 18-6 for anybody out there interested. And you said South Terrebonne with Lakeshore. Lakeshore is 11-9. So yeah, teams that are right above. Yeah, very possible. Now let's go into select. And a team that, I just have this sneaky suspicion, especially you called it with getting the young lady Charles back, Michaela Charles back. Might win it all, man, and that's Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt going in at number 2. The thing about Vanderbilt and E.D. White in that particular bracket is they're both going to have to sit around and wait. I don't know what that does for a team, but a lot of people will tell you it's absolutely great. We love it. We get healthy. We get to sit back and watch. A lot of people will tell you that, man, you're sitting around for a week and a half just waiting, and it's not great. But I would imagine both of them are going to be highly favored, even in that second round game, right?
Well, you say that. If E.D. White draws Glen Oaks and you click on Glen Oaks' schedule and look at Glen Oaks is not a bad basketball team. So
very good. I'm glad you're telling us that.
Yeah. So E.D. White is in a situation where they kind of got a more difficult draw than what one would think. Sitting at number 4, Glen Oaks is a team that is not the 13th best team. They're probably better than that. They're probably 8th or 9th best team. So that's an interesting matchup there. On the Vanderbilt side, they're going to be heavily favored in the second round, looking like it'll be the winner of Carver or Northside. I don't see either of those teams being able to challenge the Terriers. You mentioned the time off. From Vanderbilt's perspective, I think it's going to be a good thing. You know, they're going to get a little more extra time in the gym to, you know, get Michaela Charles back in playing shape all the way. And you know, the one thing that they're going to be fighting is people got to remember, like, they didn't lose a playoff game last year. They made it to the postseason and did not lose a playoff game. They self-reported a violation and they got, you know, removed from the playoffs. Good. These ladies have been wanting this moment for now a full year. Can they, you know, finally break through that wall and win the championship, or will they put too much pressure on themselves? I think that's going to be a big message for Coach Coleman is, hey, we finally got to where we wanted to get. Now let's go make it happen.
Good point. Good point. And as you were talking about E.D. White a little bit earlier, I did notice Glen Oaks got 17 wins. You don't just stumble on 17 wins. And you're saying it was a pretty good schedule. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Nonetheless, both have a bye in the first round. And the Division III select bracket. Notice that I always have to consciously think about what I'm saying when I say these brackets. Homer Christian is going to go in. They are the number 22 seed, so obviously they'll be on the road, right?
Yep, playing Holy Savior Menard, very likely. It's going to be a very tall task, but for Coach Celestine and his girls, you know, they're just continuing to lay that foundation. They have a bunch of kids there that are very young, like 8th and 9th grade young. A bunch of kids there that are just athletes that don't have a tremendous amount of basketball experience, but they're piecing it together year by year. I know Coach Celestine said going in, one of their big goals was to make the playoffs, and they did. So they're going to get in. I think that they're going to be in a situation where, you know, the message is going to be, hey, let's remember this. Let's study the bus trip. Let's see how this day goes, because this time next year we'll be, you know, ready to maybe even host a game.
Yeah, agree. And listen, Menard's just 12 and 11, I was noticing. Yeah. So just kind of depends on who you're playing, I guess. And then finally, in Division 4 of select basketball, girls basketball, at number 6, it looks like it'll be Central Catholic. Where did you have CCA seated at?
13. So they're going to be at home in the opening round. Coach Carey and her team has caught fire a little bit down the stretch. They've won some big games coming home. Maddie Carey, shout out to her, got 1,500 points in her career recently. So they are playing at some good basketball. They're going to be at home in the opening round, likely to face St. John. CCA's in a situation kind of similar to Thibodeau High. Thibodeau High has made it to the second round for the last couple of years, and now they're trying to get beyond that. CCA in the same situation, in the same boat. They're going to be favored in that opening round matchup. The challenge is going to be, okay, if you could punch it to the round of 16, can you go beyond that? So that would be the big message and the big goal there for CCA.
And let's sort of back up a little bit and congratulate the district champions in each of our local districts. In 8-5A, it was one of the river schools, right?
Destrehan, yeah, they brought home the championship. They were unscathed, really unchallenged, other than H.L. Bourgeois. They kind of rolled through everyone else, and they went undefeated. Yes, sir.
In District 8-4A, I don't think it was much competition for
Vanderbilt Catholic, rolling through the local district. Not a big surprise there. They won every game by double digits.
Homer Christians, do you know who won the Homer Christian district off the top of your head?
I do not. Let me see.
I'm going to guess and say it was either Catholic of New Iberia, maybe Franklin.
I would think Catholic of New Iberia, and I'm pulling that up right now for you, Mr. Gravois, because I believe that we are onto something there. Let's see. We have in that 2A district, it was actually West St. Mary, 8-0, that won the district.
Wow, I'm glad that you did pull that up, because I don't want to say something that is not. And listen, obviously we don't keep an eye in general on district champions like we used to, one. And two, when you're Homer Christian and you're the only local team in a district that is out in the Lafayette area, you keep up with it even less. So good for West St. Mary. Very good. Very good. CCA, Central Catholic probably won that.
Yes, undefeated in district, Central Catholic. Yes, sir.
Very good. Congratulations to all those teams. They all do it different, folks. Some of them play one round. Some of them play 2 rounds. Some of them even get into a tournament. I know that baseball is starting to get into a couple of tournaments at the end of the year to determine their district champion. The fact is, I guess it means a lot for motivational purposes, but for the big picture, it probably doesn't mean quite as much. While we're doing that, and we're going to get away from the girls bracket a little bit, and of course, we're going to bring you the scores next week and follow at Bayou Sports, and you could find as much as you want on what's going on with that. Like you said, even possibly see a girls game if you guys have the wherewithal to do that. We didn't mention a whole lot of teams that were playing at home, though, so I don't know how easy that's going to be. We do want to mention that the boys are sort of coming to an end, too. They'll finish it up this week, and we'll be doing the same thing next Monday where we're going to be talking about the boys bracket and get you caught up on what happened in the first and maybe a couple of second-round games related to girls basketball. And 8-5A in the driver's seat, and I got this from you in reading the other day. It's HL Bourgeois, right?
Yep, HL Bourgeois and Terrebonne were playing a big game on Friday. The winner of that game was going to be in solo first place, undefeated in district, and the Braves actually survived it, got the home win. So it's HL Bourgeois currently in first place in the local district.
8-4A, Vanderbilt in the driver's seat. That's sort of a log jam there in second place because everybody's sort of beating up on each other a little bit. But we're going to have a lot of teams in the playoffs from that district, right?
100%. A lot of playoff teams. Vanderbilt's going to very likely win the district championship, but from there, it's a race for second place. But all of those teams in contention are going to get at-large bids to the postseason.
In our local 2A district, and I keep calling it local, but Houma Christian's the only team we really watch out for. We're going to assume that it's probably Catholic of New Iberia, maybe West St. Mary, maybe Franklin in there. But Houma Christian in a really good place probably to get in the playoffs.
Yep, Houma Christian is going to be very likely in, and with that district, the boys district, I know a little more than I did the girls. Catholic New Iberia has a 6'9" post player, so yeah, that tells you everything you need to know.
And the interesting one is our local district 7-1A, because if you folks remember, in case you reported on this very early on, Central Catholic had to forfeit a bunch of games. But we know that if you win your district title, you have to declare a winner of your district title. They automatically get in. Not only that, Central Catholic has sort of made some steps of even getting enough power points to get in, but they still have to win the district to assure themselves. And I think it's going to boil down to the last game of the year, which is Friday, if I'm not mistaken, against CCA. Is that how you see it?
100%. So as of Friday, it was a big 3-way tie between Central Catholic, CCA, and Jeanerette. CCA opened up round 2 by beating Jeanerette. So now it's Central Catholic and CCA both sitting there at 1 district loss. CCA lost to Central Catholic in round 1. Central Catholic lost to Jeanerette in round 1. It is very likely that we see a situation where that last game of the season decides it. And it is also very likely that that could be Central Catholic's way to try to get in. Though I'll say this, they're playing at a really high level. I mean, Friday they blasted Thibodaux, a Thibodaux team that has been more than competitive in our local 5A district. So if they get in and they're 24th, they could very easily beat that number 9 seed in the opening round because they're a team that is much better than what the seed would look because of their early season forfeiture situation.
Agree 100%. And that's how it happens in the playoffs sometimes, where you have that little dark horse. I wouldn't even call them a dark horse. A team down there that is better than what their seeding is. And Central Catholic is probably going to be in that situation. Congratulations again to the district winners in girls basketball. Congratulations to the girls teams that are moving on into the playoffs. And the boys will wrap it up this week. We would be remiss not to just say, man, kudos to Central Lafourche's girls soccer program, semifinalists. And every time you see St. Thomas More coming up, I think everybody in the Bayou region is like, oh, my God, because evidently they have some kind of juggernaut in soccer, but they ran into that juggernaut this past weekend. But a great year for Central Lafourche, not only, the girls soccer team, but the boys soccer team, too.
Man, I shared this on social media over the weekend. You might have seen it. On the girls' side, there were 32 semifinal spots that were handed out amongst the brackets. 30 of those semifinal spots were occupied by select schools. 2 were occupied by non-select schools. Central Lafourche was one of the 2. So, we could talk about competitive advantages and splits and not splits, whatever it may be. They were one of 2 non-select schools to make it to the semifinals. That makes that semifinal trip look so much more impressive when you compare the apples to the apples and not the apples to the oranges.
And listen, and I'll talk a little bit more about that from the standpoint I realize, and I know you realize, LHSA has a hard job. It's not easy. But there are some things that are almost, logical that don't happen. And when you consider that for football, for baseball, for basketball, the logical standpoint that there are schools that can draw from a zone that other schools can't makes it a little unfair. Well, quite honestly, Central Lafourche is one of those schools that has a zone, right? So to be in that bracket is a little tough. It's no consolation to those girls. I know that, except to say, hey, you were the best public school, who finished in this. But yeah, it's different. Now, when you wrote that was it was well stated that, listen, please understand that sometimes the resources and the rules by which you follow are a little different. So a shout out to Central Lafourche.
100%. And we had some good local soccer teams this year. It was a good season. No one was able to make it all the way to, to the championships. But I think the depth that we had in our area is growing. And from what I understand, some young talent. So can't wait to see how that shapes out over the course of the next couple of years.
It's a sport that has grown in Louisiana because I could remember 20 years ago, teams that didn't even play soccer were. And listen, we still have some. Assumption doesn't play soccer. Central Catholic doesn't play soccer. But overall in the state of Louisiana, and especially in like the Acadiana area, the Lake Charles area, the Orleans, metro area, there's some good soccer going on. So kudos again to Central Lafourche for what they did and how far they made it. I am going to let you go, but it is baseball and softball season. I know the girls in softball are just getting started this week. Baseball has tournaments that are under their belt. Anything, just glancing over scores. I don't even know if you've been to a ballpark yet. Anything that you went, wow, that surprises me just a little bit.
I could tell you something that hasn't surprised me is that CCA is ridiculously good. They just run ruling everybody. I was a little surprised, to be honest with you. And this is going to sound like kind of a shock, but I was a little surprised that Ellender struggled as much as they did. We had Jamie Delahousse on and said, hey, I think we could go 3-1, 4-0 in the opening week. They struggled. They got beat up on. South Terrebonne had a rough opening week. Now, albeit against very tough competition. So it's one of those situations where after week 1, it's kind of wait and see. Like a lot of our local teams had one good one, then maybe one bad one. And like last year, you remember we were talking about like everybody in the Bayou region was 5-0, 4-1. Everybody started real strong. This year, it's a little more wait and see. So I'm excited to see how that all shakes out and who's going to rise to the top.
I agree. And listen, South Terrebonne will forever be the poster child for finishing 14-15, one game under 500, and winning a state championship. So baseball is sort of that game where it depends on who's on the mound, when you sort of maturate, when you get your soccer players back, when you get your baseball players back. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I'm not too bent out of shape. But as we get the girls and boys basketball playoffs sort of moving along, we're going to start talking more about baseball and what's going on with that. And I'll be very glad to have you here as we do that. Again, thank you so much for the time. I know you're very busy. I missed you this weekend simply because I almost gave you a shout out. And when I say a shout out, a text, and I noticed the Colonels weren't on ESPN Plus for baseball this week. And I was like, I don't know if there's a basketball deal where they can't do it until that's over. But I do hope we'll hear you on ESPN Plus with baseball at some point this year, too.
Wednesday, man, I got LSU and Nichols on ESPN Plus. So that'll be my first Nichols broadcast of the season. Looking forward to seeing the Colonels after taking 2 of 3. And goodness, looking forward to see the Tigers after they struck out 45 guys and only had 2 walks in 3 games. So it should be a fun one on ESPN Plus Wednesday.
Man, it's an easy game. Throw strikes.
Yep.
And I think they figured that out this weekend. And listen, the Colonels look good. And I know he got away from them on Sunday, but they were sort of, when you beat up on a team twice like they did, that happens. And, win 2 out of 3 and you're in good shape. Man, you got a good seat for that game, man.
Good seat, man. Look, I couldn't have got a ticket, but it's sold out, so that was my only way in.
All right, good. So if you can't make it out there to Ray Didier Field, remember Casey will be on ESPN Plus at night with that game. So awesome. Thank you for the time, my friend.
Absolutely happy to do it.
All right, we'll talk about boys basketball next week. As always, we thank Casey. His insight is so valuable to us, and we hope that all of our girls teams in the area do well. Remember the boys next week. So next Monday, we will be talking about the boys bracket and what some of our girls have done in the first round of their playoff action. Now we jump to baseball just a little bit. Julio Archila is the new coach over at Terrebonne High School for that baseball program. Had an opportunity to talk to him. Here's what he had to say about his Tigers. I'm fortunate to be here with the head coach of Terrebonne High School, Julio Archila. Now you have a scrimmage under your belt. You have the jamboree under your belt. You actually have started the season. Tell us those things you like and maybe don't like about your team right now.
Other things I like about them, one, we're learning how to compete. We're learning what it takes to show up every day. And then, of course, we're having to battle the stuff that has chased us from previous years, which is too many walks, not being effective at the plate, not having competitive at-bats. But those are all things that come with time. This is a process, and we had a long way to go, and I think we've come a long way since we started in the fall. It's going to be a continuous building project every day.
Listen, I didn't get the chance to talk to you about this. Was it a situation where you sort of walked into a schedule? Did you have any opportunity to kind of work on that schedule yourself a little bit?
So Todd had done a pretty good job of scheduling beforehand. Now, there were some games that weren't confirmed, and there were some open dates. So I went out and I hate to say it like this, but I kind of beefed up the schedule. The way I look at it is you play to the level of your competition, and that was something that Coach Buck had put into us or instilled in us many years ago, is you play to the level of your competition. So we're playing a bunch of good teams. We have no choice but to play well, or we're going to get run off the field. So our choices are learn to play baseball the right way, or we're going to play a lot of 5-inning games.
It's a great transition because you brought up Coach Calvin Buxton, who coached you when you were in high school. Those things you still carry on to the field every day. Talk about that a little bit, what you got from Coach Buxton.
It's not just the field, it's every day in life. Showing up, win or lose the next day, working hard, knowing that even though you work hard, it might not be your time. You might not be the guy. It might not work out for you, but that's not what we're working for. We're working for giving ourselves an opportunity to compete, an opportunity to win, and let the chips fall as they may.
We're talking about probably 5.5 months, 6 months since you were named the coach here. Talk about that process. What has been expected and what has maybe been a little bit unexpected for the position?
I think the expectations were just to get us a little bit more organized, I guess, for lack of a better word. I think there was I'm the fourth coach in 5 years, so there's been no type of consistency. I think every coach that here had their own little style. My job was to come in, I think, and just to get us in a position to where I'll be here next year. The players will have some form of consistency, and rather than having to learn a new system or learn a new coach, we'll build on it year after year. One of the things that's happened since is Houma Junior High started a program, and one of our coaches is on their staff as well with his son. So it's going to give us the opportunity to work with the 7th and 8th graders and kind of put in our system, so to speak, before they even step foot on our campus.
Very good. Listen, one interesting thing about you, for you folks who don't know, 2 sons who are actually playing collegiate ball. Dominique out in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And then you have Diego, who's in Arkansas.
Yes, sir. He's in Arkansas.
How do you make all of that work this upcoming year? Because I know you're going to follow them. You had mentioned something about we live in a day and age where it's a little bit easier. But all that being said, I'm sure you're going to keep an eye on those guys, right?
Every day. I mean, I look at them. They don't necessarily look back at me or communicate with me. If I get a text back saying that things were good, then that speaks volumes for Dom and Diego. They're not very talkative. But at the end of the day, it was never, I never sent them on the journey to do anything for me. It was all about them. I never even really sent them on the journey. They did it on their own. They earned everything, every step of the way on their own. And whether I'm watching or not, is going to be fun. They're going to play whether I watch or not. So it was never really about me as much as it is them earning their spot and creating their own path.
Have you sort of looked at the schedules and saw anywhere close they may be coming? What's maybe the closest, whether it be Texas Tech or Arkansas, Blue Ridge?
Ridge Mountain.
Ridge Mountain. Yes. What's the closest either would come?
So Dom, the closest they're going to get, the only opportunity I'm going to get to see him is either after our season, or there is a weekend break where they're in Houston for a weekend. So I think I might be able to go and see a couple games. If not, then of course everything's streamed somehow, some way. Diego, they play a little bit more. I think he comes into Louisiana. They go to Bossier. And then, of course, this year they play Panola College, which is where Dom was in his JUCO years. So that's going to be a little bit interesting as well. But, again, everything's online these days, so I get to watch them that way.
Very good. Thanks for giving us some time.
Oh, thank you very much.
A big thanks to Julio and thanks to Casey for joining us today. We, again, hope all of our girls in the area do well in the first round of their playoff action. We are now in softball season. We are now in baseball season. And remember, next Monday, boys basketball gets announced. And what I mean by that is their playoff brackets get announced. We'll get everybody caught up with everything on that. I think we're pretty much on schedule. The interesting thing, Dustin, is when we get to Mardi Gras, we may have to shift some things around just a little bit.
Yes.
I know you're going to be out of town, if I'm not mistaken.
I'll be in town, but I won't be here.
It's a good way to put it. That's a good song. I'll be in town, but I won't be here.
That's it.
There we go. Now, we'll figure that out as we get deeper into the playoffs for both boys and girls basketball. And, of course, as we said, softball really going strong, baseball really going strong. We're not going to neglect those sports like tennis and golf. We'll let you know who's doing well and things like that going forward. Powerlifting coming to an end. Wrestling, having all of their state finals. So we'll get you caught up with everything. And we do hope that you go subscribe to our podcast so that we can get you the latest notifications. That's it for us. We hope you have a terrific week. We'll see you next Monday.